Um, Welcome, everybody. This is Craig Peterson, ESU-CC Cooperative Purchasing Director. And today we have with us Securely. We have a team of individuals, and I think both Nick and Mike are going to kind of lead that with interjection from others from the Securely team. So I'll kind of hand it over to you to provide an overview of what Securely is and your product line.
Yeah, thanks so much, Craig. And so just some brief introductions. We'll start with the Securely team. Nick, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Schmidt. I am the regional sales manager covering the state of Nebraska. Been here a short little time, but very nice to meet everyone, and look forward to meeting everybody individually after this.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Dan?
Yeah, I'm Dan Villegas, and I am Securely's local account manager for the state of Nebraska.
Dan and Vin?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Vin. I am the director of sales here. I pretty much manage the territory with Nick. Yeah, I've been with Securely for 4+ years now, and I remember Craig meeting you like almost day one of my job, right? And throughout the past several years, right, we've definitely have grown into this leadership role. But I'm really excited to be here again and just kind of talk about everyone where Securely has grown since we last spoke. Gosh, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, thanks, Vin. And I'm Mike Jolly. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Securely, also the General Manager here on the East Coast. I'm not a tech guy. I'm an educator. I was a teacher and coach and high school principal for about a decade in North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. And so as I talk to you today, I'm kind of coming from how Securely can help with student safety, student wellness, productivity, physical safety from a former principal standpoint, right? And kind of talking those experiences, because you guys that are in the school districts, working with the students, working with the staff, it's really important, we think, from Securely standpoint to let you know how this is going to help everybody on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to take you through kind of our digital, if you will, student safety, student wellness solutions, our web filter, our tool we call it Auditor, 24 Home, which is our parent app. And then Vin is going to talk to you more about our management, our class management, our classroom and MDM, as well as our physical safety with visitors. So, kind of to dive in, if you haven't heard of us, which I know, some of you have, but a lot of you may not. We are a cloud-based safety wellness company. We've been around since 2012, so we are just coming up on 10 years. And in that time, we have saved over 1,500 lives. And I know that's a bold claim. I want to be very clear on how we've done that. So I will speak to that as we go through today. But just to show you kind of what our presence is, we do serve 10 million students in the United States. That equates to about 15,000 schools and districts. Doesn't matter what size the district is. We serve private schools with 100 students, and we serve Broward County, Florida, which I believe is the 4th or 5th biggest district in the country, pushing 300,000 students. So, and everything in between. We serve metropolitan areas, large cities. We serve Atlanta, Georgia, and Portland, and San Francisco, and again, everything in between. So, regardless of your school size, regardless of device, we're going to be able to provide that wellness solution. And when we talk about it, I always start every Securely demo. Anybody from Securely who's ever been on a product presentation with me will hear about Paul. But I talk about Paul because every single one of you have a Paul in your school right now. And I want to be very clear as we talk about that to explain what that means, right? I don't mean as extreme as this young man, but what I mean is you have kids walking around your schools and districts right now who need help, right? Maybe it's depression, right? Maybe it's they feel like hurting themselves. Maybe they feel like hurting others. But these kids aren't running around saying, hey, I need help. Hey, I have a problem, right? Some may, there are some kids who will go say, I need to see a counselor or I need to talk to somebody, but we know a lot don't. And for example, my young man here, this was the school, I was high school principal. We made national news, several years ago because he comes into class and says, I've got a bomb and I'm joining ISIS. And luckily for everybody involved, he didn't have a bomb. But he did have weapons on campus. I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and I always equated to like a Rambo style, massive hunting knives. that he had brought on campus and hidden, involved in a lot of other technology stuff. Child pornography, actually was charged and convicted on multiple counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. And the reason I talk about all this is because I feel like had we had Securely in place, we would have been able to head a lot of this off. Because what Securely does is, as I mentioned, it helps you identify students, and it does that by using filter data, by using email data, what they're doing on online documents, what they're sending out on social media on the school device. So we're able to go out and grab their digital footprint and then kind of take that information and look over it, review it, determine, is this, kid probably in crisis? And then we're able to alert the people who need to know, which are the principals and counselors. And there's a lot of great solutions out there. There's web filters out there. They use keywords or they store this data. But if they're not giving you this information in real time, then you don't know who to intervene with, right? You don't know who to talk to. You don't know who to involve counselors and get those services. I'm sure your schools have a great counseling program, right? Mental health professionals. But again, if you got kids like Paul who had good grades, good attendance, no discipline history, they're not knocking down the door to talk to them, right? Because they're not the kids who are typically identified as those who do need some of that help. So let's dive in and talk a little bit more. I just want to show you, and not to sensationalize this, but I do want to let you know, as I mentioned, there are kids everywhere who are crying out for help. Just take a second and read some of these searches, right? These are real single students. Student one is one. It's not a group of students. That is one student, just like student 2 and 3, who are served by Securely districts. And this is their digital footprint, if you will, what they've been telling Google. Again, right, pretty rough stuff to read, but I think it's important to know that this is what kids are looking for when they search. And these are from school devices. Right? These are school Chromebooks. These are iPads. These are, Windows, whatever, doesn't matter the device, we're seeing it, we're capturing it regardless of where they are. And then we're able to take this information and let somebody know, right? We can let the counselor, we can let the principal. So whoever that is, we're going to be able to send that out to them. So as you look at the product portfolio we're going to talk about today, you look at the center of that object, it's technology. And here's what I love about speaking to anybody who works with technology is because you are the key, right? To the technology department holds the key in the district to all these things, right? To student wellness, to student engagement, and to student safety. And because, again, it's not the end all be all, and we will talk some physical safety as well, but that kind of does involve technology. And when you talk about wellness overall, we know the kids have to be mentally, emotionally, behaviorally, they have to be healthy in order to learn. If they don't feel safe, they're not going to learn. If their parents don't feel safe, they're not going to want their kids in the building. And we all know, we've seen principals leaving the profession. We've seen teachers, I'm sure some of you have seen some of that turnover in your district over the last 18 months. We know, and safety is a part of that, not just, COVID or frustration with community or parent. So this is huge, right? So we're going to dive in and talk about the safety, particularly with the cloud-based web filter. Talk about technology, then we'll talk about that with MDM. I'll talk wellness with our auditor in 24 Solutions, as well as Vin and I, he'll talk classroom and I'll talk about Securely Home. So let's start with the filter, right? Securely's filter, it was our first product on the market. It's, what we started with, way almost 10 years ago, putting in place because districts needed a cloud-based solution. And we were the first to provide that. So when you see what's there, filter obviously is going to help you get that, that safer, more educational web experience for all of your students. It's going to help with your SEPA compliance, right? We all want to be compliant with the Child Internet Protection Act and make that good faith effort, which, our filter does. But it also gives you that full visibility into their online activity. It gives you that reporting that you need. And more importantly, outside of the technology department, it gives your principals and counselors access to reporting, right? We have great ways through our filter that you can give a read-only dashboard to each school site administrator, counselor, dean of students. So if I have an issue and I'm a principal and I have an investigation, I don't need to call up the technology department and waste your time to say, hey, I need a report. I need these days. I need these students. I just log into Securely, select the kids, select the dates I need, and print it. I can, narrow down the type of activity. So this takes the whole idea of this is to get all the information we need, but take some work off of the IT team's plate and put this in the hands of principals and counselors when it comes to what the kids are doing. As I mentioned, it is 100% cloud-based, filtering for all devices, both on and off site. There's guest and BYOD filtering options. And we do authentication with both Google and Microsoft Azure. And then of course we have that full man in the middle SSL decryption on HTTPS. And you know, in my part, I'm not going to dive in, but as we get in the Q&A, you know, then we'll be able to pull up our dashboard if you do have any questions during that to actually show you what that looks like. That at a high level, that is our cloud-based filter. That's, you know, what we started with. And that is the product that, you know, districts, countless districts across the country, thousands, you know, have put in place to solve a lot of different issues they're experiencing, from bandwidth issues to filtering off site to filtering different types of devices. And we can do all that with Filter. And then we talk about safety, we'll get into Auditor. So Auditor is using AI. You know, I mentioned some keywords earlier, but Auditor uses sentiment analysis. And with that sentiment analysis, it's looking at those students' online activities like email, what they're writing in online, like a Google Doc, for example. It's looking at images they're emailing as attachments. It's looking at images they're uploading into Drive. So it's scanning all those things. It's even looking at social media if you allow that on your school devices. And it's looking for indications of grief and self-harm. As you see on the dashboard in the image, there's the category. So grief and self-harm, which would include things like, you know, depressed, why do I feel sad? It also includes things like suicidal ideation. So if a student is writing a Google Doc and they're going that Google Doc and they're writing a suicide note, or they're doing that in email, you know, we're going to see that. If they're writing, you know, things about why am I depressed or why does nobody like me? That's the kind of stuff we can flag, because we want to catch it long before a student ever starts writing about hurting themselves or hurting others. We want to catch it when there's those first initial signs of why am I sad? Why do I feel this way? People don't like me, because we know that's where kids are starting out, and that's what we're seeing. We also flag for bullying, so students that are harassing each other. And while I'm talking about bullying, we have a great feature that's underway called Think Twice. And the whole purpose of this is, let's say students are typing comments on something. Let's say, for example, a kid uploads a class project to YouTube and other kids go on there and they harass the student in the comments. And kids are like, dang, I can't even do a project in class without, you know, my classmates harassing me. So our tool called Think Twice is going to be able to grab that at the browser level, and it's actually going to push a warning out to the student. And that warning is going to say, hey, this looks like you're going to bully or harass somebody. Are you sure you want to do this? So that's kind of integrated within Auditor. It's a coming soon feature, should be out later this year, but that will help with the bullying piece. But we also flag bullying emails, bullying messages on social media, because we all know, you know, kids are relentless, right? When I was, you know, if I was being bullied in the 80s, I would just walk home a different way. I would move to a different side of the cafeteria, but kids can't do that. Right? Kids get the keyboard courage. They sit behind a phone, they sit behind a laptop, and they can harass a kid repeatedly from across town, across state, across the country, across the world. And we know what the repercussions are of that. I mean, we're seeing kids as young as 9, 10, 11 years old, you know, taking their life over being harassed at school. So that's what they're, violence is the next one, you know, kids that are searching for, how do I build a bomb? Right? How do I, you know, where do I get weapons for a school shooting? And again, everything I'm saying is not meant to sensationalize. It's not meant to cause it. It's what we see almost every single day when we serve 15,000 schools and districts at Securely. You also look for nudity. As I mentioned, we have AI that's going to go through. It'll scan the image. If it determines it's nude, we have the functionality where you can quarantine that image. So it will blur the image and quarantine it so the student doesn't have access to it. It blurs it so, you know, somebody at school can investigate and get in the idea of, yes, this is probably something bad, you know, based on what they can see. And then you can investigate using whether it's school resource officer or counselors or whatever protocols you have in place. But we do know that, you know, nude images on the school network have been a problem the last 2 years, particularly with COVID and kids going home and learning and having a little bit less supervision. Sometimes leads to not good things when it comes to kids and images. And you don't want that on your network. A couple other things I want to highlight on this page. If you look on the right side of the image, beside each of those flags, you'll see a confidence score. So I mentioned we use sentiment analysis. You can actually set the sensitivity of that AI. So our confidence doesn't tell you how severe something is. It tells you how likely it is to be an actionable item. So you can set the sensitivity at a level 1, which will give you an alert on anything that we remotely think is related to bullying, self-harm, or violence. Or you can set it all the way up to a 5, which means it's got to hit on some pretty significant points in our AI to be determined as something you would want to see. So you can actually go in and control the number of alerts you're getting by setting that sensitivity. And as I mentioned, All these alerts for emails and docs and Drive, these can go right out straight in real time to counselors, principals. As many people as you want at each school site can receive these alerts. Here's some examples of what as I mentioned, the alerts. So if a student search for how do I kill myself, this email alert is literally, if I hit enter on that search, this is going to end up in a principal or counselor's inbox within about 15 seconds. It's literally real time. It'll show what the kid searched for. It'll have the date, the time, the day of the week, and it'll have the student's first and last name. Again, all the information that the school personnel, the principal, counselor is going to need to help with that. We also flag sites, and I do want to be specific about sites, right? There are some great websites out there, and there are some terrible websites out there. And there are websites out there that are meant to teach kids that suicide is the answer, and here's how you can do so painlessly. So we have a database of sites like that. And if a student is visiting those sites, we're going to flag them. We're going to send the alert so the administrator can see who went to that site and when they went there and what the site was. We also flag sites, and I don't mean to say these are bad sites. They're actually good, like Suicide Prevention Lifeline.org offers resources to students who may be thinking about harming themselves. They can go on that site. They can actually chat with the counselor. So we certainly don't block that, but we flag that as well. And the reason we flag that is because if a student is at the point where they are visiting a suicide help site online and they're engaging in chat, right, or they're reading those articles about, about reasons to not harm yourself, we need to make sure the school is aware, right? The counselor, principal, people that are involved should be able to see that. And then you'll see an example of an email. Thank you for caring. No one else does. Time for me to die. Students sending this out. It's going to have the subject, who it's from, who it's to, time stamped, again, so the district can get an idea of what is there, right? So, yes.
We had a question. Are students flagged? What are they made aware of when they are flagged?
So outside of Think Twice, which tells them students are not aware when they do something that is flagged, that's because the administrators will look at that and then determine, is this an actionable item? And then, of course, when they call down and talk to the student about it, they would obviously be aware, but there's nothing that automatically notifies a student that they are flagged from us. And whoever asked that, does that clarify that question? Whoever asked that?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. Perfect. And we do recommend, since you mentioned that, we do recommend if you're implementing these tools to let your parents know, to let students know. They're going to know anyway, right? The first time somebody gets called down to an office over, something that they've done, something on social media or an email they sent, it's going to get out. The first time a student hits a securely blocked page. So what we want to do is we want to encourage, one, districts have that verbiage in their acceptable use policies that says, everything you do is subject to search, right? But above and beyond that, we want the districts to get ahead of that narrative to let everybody know this isn't spying on kids. This is about keeping kids safe. This is about the state of the world we live. This is about, according to the CDC, suicide is the second leading cause of death for middle and high school age kids. And this is our extra effort as a school district to go above and beyond to help your kids by identifying them if they are struggling with grief or self-harm or depression. Also preventative of violence. So we have a full parent kit for you that talks about all of our solutions and how they help. And it allows you to just plug and play, right? You take our document, you take what you need out of it, put it on your letterhead, and you're able to reach out and communicate with parents about why you're doing this. And that's been an important step for districts to understand, because it can seem overwhelming, right? Even to parents to say, oh, you're monitoring all this stuff. Well, yes, but we're monitoring only the school-owned account on school-owned devices, either or. We're not looking at their personal cell phones. We're not seeing searches on their personal phones at home. We're just seeing what they're doing on that school Chromebook or that school iPad, wherever that is, or when they're logged in with their school, whether it's Google or Microsoft account. So I'm glad you asked that question.
Another question though.
Yes.
When the alerts happen, is there any type of screen capture so we can see the context where the term or flag was used?
So for the filter, there is not. It just sends you like I'll go back and show you the excerpt there. So you'll see what the message was that got flagged, part of it, and the same thing on the site. You'll just see the exact site they went to and the time they went there, and the search. You'll see the exact words that they were searching that were there. But with your question of context, That's why we had that actually leads great into the next piece with 24, right? So we know there can be a lot of alerts, right? Even though you can set the sensitivity, let's say we serve districts with 100,000 plus students. That's a lot of data flying around. There's a lot of things that could be, flagged there. So we have a team of analysts who 24/7, 365, they are looking at all this data as well. And they're looking at this data using a tool. And that tool is called At Risk. You're actually seeing an example of it on the screen. That's the interface they have. And the whole purpose of having this team is because, look, we know everybody on this call cares about the students. Every single student in your district, you care about them. You want them to be safe. All your principals, counselors, every teacher. At the same time, you're not 24-hour employees, right? I don't think there's any, even though parents may think you should be, there's no real obligation to be 24 hours a day, seeing what these kids are doing will be on all call for it. And we realize that. I realize that pressure myself, being a principal, feeling like you always have to be on. So that is why we have instituted this 24-hour team. So, as a principal, I can go home and I can be with my family. I can watch my kids' soccer match. I can watch my daughter's swim meet. I can go on a date with my wife and not feel like I have to be tied to my phone, because look, I know I'm not, going to be legally liable at 3 a.m. if an alert comes through and I'm asleep and I don't see it. But that doesn't mean that if I woke up, something happened, there was an alert sitting in my email, that I wouldn't be heartbroken, right? So that's the idea, that we have this team who sees those alerts. And let's say there is an alert coming at 3 a.m. If those three examples I shared with you at the beginning of the webinar, those were all extreme risk. This red category that's circled there, those are all extreme risk alerts. And if that happens at 3 a.m., we're going to go straight to local law enforcement or public safety, whoever in your community, whether it's your city or county, whoever you want us to reach out to, because we know if we call a dean of students at 3 a.m., they're not equipped. They're not going to go out to a student's house, that's thinking about harming themselves or others. They're going to turn around and call 911 or call, whatever, organization is in your community. So outside of school hours, this team look at that data, put human eyes on it, and to the question above about the context, they're able to put context to it. So let's say a student searches, for example, how do I kill someone? 13 seconds later, they search, how do I kill someone in Call of Duty? Right? Context. So this is where your question that you asked a second ago, this is where the context comes in, is with the 24 team, because our AI does, look at everything and does try to take things, but we know AI is not perfect. And that's why we offer this human service to go behind them and put their eyes on it. Another example about context is Shakespeare. I was a ninth grade teacher. Romeo and Juliet deals with sex and suicide and murder and poisoning, basically anything that a student safety company may flag. And if a student's writing a Google Doc on that and it gets flagged, that's where our analysts can come in and look at it and say, nope, they're talking, the word Romeo or Juliet, or they're talking about the balcony scene. This is a kid doing an assignment, or also, hey, we have 30 flagged docs from the same OU. That's a class doing an assignment right now. So that's the kind of context that our team was able to do. And then they'll skip over it. And this team will react in a few different ways. Like I said, I mentioned the phone call. That's for the extreme risk. That's when we think something is, there's a student at risk of hurting someone in the immediate future, like, the next 24 hours. So we're going to call you, we'll call your designees during the school day. So if this happens at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday, we're going to call the principal or counselor. Each school determines their call tree. And then outside of school hours, we have the option of calling public safety first. So this has been a great way for districts to have that peace of mind, even when it comes to like liability and worrying about what if somebody misses it. Well, now you've got Securely's team that you're paying to go in and watch these alerts, right? Using AI. And again, going back to the AI, we're constantly looking at all those data points we have from the filter, from auditor. So we're looking at the searches, the sites, the social media, the emails, the docs. All that stuff is being combined into a living, breathing risk score for your students, kind of like a stoplight you can see here by the colors, red, yellow, green. So we have kids that are low risk, and then we go up kind of a scale into, where they're at that extreme risk where we may want to, be able to call and alert somebody on that. But that's the great thing about our AI, is it's looking at all those data points, it's processing, trying to weed out what it can, also picking up on things without keywords. And then when it bubbles it up as, hey, something's not right here, it's not low risk, that's when our humans come in and put their eye on it. And that's a huge piece for us, to have that human team. And that team has a wide background. We have former school counselors, we have, person with a psychology degree, we have former law enforcement that have been on that team. So it's a variety of people, but what they have in common is that they understand when students are crying out for help based on the data that's there. So we have the AI that looks at all the data, pops up into this tool, and then the humans put their eyes on it, and then they reach out accordingly to school. Now, let's say it's something, happens that seems bad, but, they have a search for how do I kill myself painlessly? And then 30 seconds later, they're watching Sonic the Hedgehog videos on YouTube. That's an extreme search, but nothing in that pattern shows that the kid is going to do anything now. That in that case, we're going to email the school and say, look, when you get a chance, talk to the student. Doesn't seem like there's anything significant from a time frame, standpoint, because they're doing their normal activity that they always do. But hey, take a look. Also, we keep those kids escalated for 30 days. So once a kid has been escalated by our tool, they stay escalated for 30 days. So if there's anything else that happens during that time, another notice is sent to our humans to come in and take a review of that student, just because then it could constitute more of a pattern. And it's easy to miss things, right? And that's the great thing about adding the human touch to it combined with the AI, because you start to pick up on those little nuances that as a one-off wouldn't mean anything. But when you look at a one-off here, a one-off 7 days later, and a one-off 2 weeks after that, then it starts to give you that better picture of what the students have. And then one of the last things, we wrap all this up by giving this data to your parents as well. Securely was the first tool back in 2015. We released our Securely Home web portal that has now kind of evolved into this great app for iOS or Android. And this has been game changing for districts, because what this does is it puts the filter data and the filtering tools in the hands of your parents. But I want to be very clear when I say that. The parents, the district has full control over what the parents see and what they do. So I don't want you to think it's, the wild, wild west. Parents can block anything at any time and do whatever they want. You as a district have full control over what the parents can see and what they can do within this app. So on the right, you'll see these 4 tiles: the activity feed, flag, rules, and offline schedules. So let's start with the activity feed. Parents are going to be able to see 30 days of activity for all their kids. So the searches, the sites they visit, and this isn't a gotcha. This isn't about spying on your kid. This is about teaching your kid, how to be a digitally responsive citizen, how not to be a knucklehead online. We've all seen the headlines the last couple of years. I think, one of my favorite examples is Harvard rescinded 6 acceptances, and Harvard, based on acceptance rate, is the hardest university to get into in the United States. Multiple kids got in, and they were trading racist memes on Facebook in a group, and they had that acceptance rescinded. We've seen athletes lose scholarships. We've seen, look, I have my friends of mine in their 40s who do stupid stuff online. Imagine, 14 and being handed, internet access, right? It's hard. And so parents are there to guide. Just like when I'm teaching my daughter how to drive a car, I'm sitting in the passenger seat, watching what she's doing. And if I see her start to veer off the road towards a tree, I'm not going to let her hit the tree to teach a lesson. I'm going to grab the wheel and straighten out the car. And that's what this allows parents to do, because if they start seeing those concerning searches, then they step in, right? We have a mom saying, look, I saw my daughter searching for how do I lose weight rapidly? How do I get skinny? How do I get an eating disorder? Right? Bang, bang, bang. That is important for a parent to see in real time so they can head that off and have those conversations. We also do flagged activity. And those alerts that I mentioned from the filter, so the disturbing websites or the searches that are indicative of self-harm or violence, when those get flagged, those all can sit in that flagged activity section for parents, and they can get a real-time notice. So I can get a push notification as a parent if one of my kids is searching for that. The rules portion, parents can set filtering rules outside of school hours. So I can create my own little block list if I want. So if I'm tired of my kid being on ESPN.com and they're flunking algebra, I'm going to block ESPN.com. It's not a bad site, but it's a waste of time, and I need them home doing homework. So literally parents can make their own allow, deny list. And then offline schedules is our screen time feature. Parents can go in and set a regular bedtime. So let's say 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., the device will disconnect from the internet. So parents don't have to worry about wrestling that Chromebook out of their kid's hand or that iPad, whatever, because they're worried, right? And what are they worried about? They're worried about all the things can go wrong with a young person and a device. They're on a chat room. they're playing too much gaming, they're watching bad stuff on streaming media that or more screen time they need. So parents with this app can set that recurring time every night when the internet shuts off, and they can do pause in real time. Last piece of this is we do stories. Every 24 hours, each of the students has a story that is reset, as you'll see on the right, and we'll give them a snapshot of the videos they've watched on YouTube, the searches they've done, but more importantly, we'll show them where they're spending their time. So as a parent, I know, hey, my kids spent 43% of their time today on educational sites, 7% on YouTube, 22% on games. So it gives parents that regular snapshot of what they are doing. So just to kind of wrap that up, we have our cloud-based filter, any device, anywhere. It's going to give you the granularity you need. It's got the reporting that is what, it's built for K-12. So it's great from an IT standpoint, but also gives principals and counselors what they need. We have auditor that's looking at the sites and searches we have auditor that's looking at the emails that are sent and received, the attachments, the activity within Docs and Drive, flagging those things. We have our 24-hour team. The 24 team is looking after all these alerts. They're using this tool to help bubbling up. And if something's going wrong, they're going to reach out to the district in real time, let them know, hey, you've got an emergency here, or they're going to reach out to law enforcement, when those kids are on the verge of hurting themselves or others. And then you have Home, which is this great tool that allows parents to engage and see what their kids are doing, what they're learning, and have those conversations. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Vin, and still we'll take questions, any of the stuff I talked about. We'll have time at the end for those questions. I'm going to start.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, perfect. There you go. All right, let's share this really quick. Cool. You guys can all see the screen? Oops.
Yep.
Lovely. Okay. I can't see the chat right now. So if you got a question, right, someone read it out or just unmute yourself, let me know. So this part of the discussion, right, it's going to be more on device management, right? Number one thing we see here, of course, is an MDM, right? For those schools that have Apple devices, I'm talking iPads, Macs, Apple TVs. The big question is, how do we go ahead and now manage these devices so I can have kind of an enterprise control over what's being done on these types of devices? Now, is it? Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. Okay. Is it just me or is it like kind of freaking out? Let's see here.
It's stable, Vin. You're good.
Because I can't click on anything. Let's try again. Okay, there we go. Okay, so one of the first things what we can do here is create essentially an app approval process, right? So let's say, a lot of our schools, right, from K through 2 have iPads. And it gets to the point where you have a kindergarten teacher who is looking up a different tool to talk about animals, ABCs, going through numbers, realizing that, oh, I really want this app, right? Whether this app costs money or it's a free app, how do I go ahead and get this app on all of my student devices? So what we've created is an entire app approval process. So where as a teacher, they can go in here and essentially research whatever app is in the app store, right? We call it, ABC123. Hey, I want this app. They can go in and submit a request, and there's an entire workflow that goes to your IT team where your IT team can receive a notification. They can now dig deeper into this app. Is this going to cost us money? Is the rating appropriate? Let's preview this app just to see if it's appropriate. And then they can decide, are we going to approve this app or are we going to deny this app? And as a teacher, in real time, they'll get kind of pretty much a status update of where this app request is in the current flow. But once this is done and it's approved, as the IT team, I can go ahead and just in a click of a button, automatically have this app installed in every single one of my iPads, right? So it makes this entire process of getting new apps, of getting new tools for teachers a lot faster and a lot smoother. Once this happens, teachers are going to be given essentially what we call like a securely locker, right? This is a locker of all of the educational content that they decide they want to share with their students. So here in this locker, what a teacher can do, say, is, you know what? Today, we're learning about animals, right? Here's this website that I need folks to go to. I can go on and click on this, this link and send it off to every single one of my iPads. The big reason why this is so helpful is a teacher, instead of writing on the whiteboard, www.animals.com/anaconda/whatever, right? As a teacher, imagine a kindergartner student, a first grader, second grader, trying to do all that. You just spent 10 minutes making sure every single student entered it correctly, right? They use a comma instead of a .com. Now we're going to try and figure this out. This is where this kind of classroom management side of it comes into play, right? I can create a link, I can type it in right away, and I can just push it out to my students in real time. The moment I click enter, it's going to show up to all of my student devices. But I can do the same thing now when it comes to apps, right? Let's say we just got approval to download this ABC 123 app, right? It's now in my queue. I have access to it. I want every single one of my students to access it right now. What I'll do is that I can lock them down to that specific app, right? Hey, it's after lunch. We've just transitioned to numbers. So here is this app that I want everyone to see. When I push out that single app, every other app on the iPad is going to be hidden. Big part is distraction, right? We get it. You have Safari, you have YouTube Kids on there, maybe. You have the 12 different apps that you're currently using. But for today's lesson, my kindergartners, so they're not confused, they're not lost. I'm saying, hey, we're looking at the 123 ABC app. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push that out. Every other app is hidden, right? Even if I want, I can lock it down too. I can freeze the screen. I can say, hey, you know what? We're going to do a quick pause. We're going to put a lock on the iPad. Now we're going to be focused on the spreadsheet that we're passed out, right? The concept here is, as a teacher, you're managing all of these iPads. It's gosh, how can I ensure that my first graders, my second graders are actually doing what I really need them to do with this iPad that in the very beginning was a toy, now is being used in the educational world and as a school product, right? So that portion right there, right? Our MDM, of course, is going to cover on the IT side of things, right? That app flow process, creating new apps, managing these iPads, assigning these iPads to the correct individuals. And then there's a teacher component, right? Pushing out apps, pushing out websites onto these iPads and kind of giving teachers that control. But now there's the second section of, well, let's talk about other different types of devices. And what we have here, of course, is our classroom management solution. Within this classroom.
We have
Oh,
one
sorry?
question here. Does this work
Oh.
with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi in the classroom?
What do you mean by that? So I guess technology-wise, it is Wi-Fi, right? The devices is connected to the internet. So the iPads are connected to the internet. We're just going to go and push them out that way. Yeah. So that communication is via the internet. And I hope that's what you were referencing. If not, I'll have the chat open too. Okay, so we have the iPad side of things, right? Now, of course, Chromebooks are really popular, MacBooks are really popular, and of course, Windows devices are also very popular. What we have here is an entire classroom management tool that essentially works on these other devices, right? The non-iPad devices, right? You can see here, right? We will provide a central focus for students, right? How are we going to ensure that students, when they're in front of their Chromebook, when they're in front of their Windows computer, that we can really focus in on these students and make sure that they are paying attention, right? We want to guide them to a certain direction in terms of the education world. And I'll break down all of these categories throughout the presentation as well. We want to monitor these students and then how to communicate with these students, right? So looking here at kind of guiding the classroom, what we've done here is that when we deploy these, the classroom tool, as a teacher, I'm going to be able to see everyone's screen right away, right? I have 20 students in my classroom. When I activate this, I'm going to automatically see every single one of my students. And the great benefit of this is that it works at any location. So I'm glad schools are back in session, but if we happen to go hybrid, if we happen to go fully remote again, huge benefit of this classroom is, as a teacher, I can be in my home office. My students are at their grandma's house, way across the country. We have someone else, right next door. It doesn't matter where student is physically located or the teacher is physically located. If that student is connected online as a teacher, I can start my class and I can automatically see their screens, see their tabs, and will essentially have all of these controls that we'll talk about. So the first thing you see is push open websites. Exact same concept that I gave. Hey, today for history class, right? Here's an article from CNN that I want everyone to read. I'm going to copy and paste this URL. I'm going to push it out to every single one of those students' devices, right? From here, I can go even further by locking them down just to, so you only have access to that one article. And what I mean by that is, you know what? We're going to do a quiz. Perfect. You just read the CNN article. I just created a quiz on Google Forms. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push out this quiz on Google Forms, and it's going to lock you down so you don't have access to any other website. You try to go to google.com, you're going to get a blocked page because right now, hey, you just read this article on CNN. Now I'm locking you down. So you're stuck on this Google Form quiz that I just created as a teacher, right? Here you create collections. All this essentially these are bookmarks. I know that tomorrow I'm doing my quiz on World War II. So I'm going to create a collection or a list of bookmarks with all of the websites that I'm going to share to my classroom. This is just planning in advance. Optional to do this, right? You have those really organized teachers that says, yep, on Wednesday, this is the World War II day. Here are the 4 websites that I'm going to use. So I'm going to create that collection right away. So when Wednesday hits, I can one click of a button, all of the sites are pushed out to my students. And then you can also control tabs, right? So not only can I see my student screens, I'm going to be able to see every single tab that they have open and realize that, oh, Nick, he has Apple's website open. He's looking at the new iPhone. He shouldn't be on that. I'm going to close that tab out for Nick, right? So as a teacher, I can see their screens. Now I can control those tabs that are on those devices. Now we talk about keeping students focused as well. Easy thing here is locking their screen. As a teacher, I can lock down everyone's screen and I can say a message of, look up at the whiteboard. What's going to happen here is that every single student is going to get a giant blocked screen that says, look up at the whiteboard. This Chromebook is essentially dead. They can't go to Google. They literally can't escape this giant screen that says, look up at the whiteboard. It's now pretty much a paperweight, right? So as a teacher, if I'm doing something on the whiteboard, I don't want students looking up at their screen at all. So I'm going to go ahead and lock them down, right? And we talked about the lock sites. That was my example of we're doing a quiz, right? I'm going to push out a specific website and I'm locking you down on just that website so you don't have access to anything else. We'll also give teachers the ability to create a custom block list. I am a Spanish teacher. So when I start my classroom, immediately I have on my block list Google Translate, Bing Translate, Yahoo Translate, right? I'm an English teacher. I'm going to block SparkNotes. I'm a history teacher. I'm going to block Wikipedia. So when I start my classroom right away, I've already have created a custom block list, and that's going to be automatically applied to my students. Once that class is over, right, I will now have access to Wikipedia, Google Translate, etc. Right? Again, all we're trying to do here is every single student now has a device. How do we keep them focused? How do we keep them paying attention? And of course, for teachers, how do we make you feel a little more secure and that your students aren't distracted, your students aren't, browsing the internet, and as you walk by them, they're going to change their screen right away, and that they think, I've been on CNN this entire time, but I've really, found some gaming website or I'm doing something else right on the side. And this is kind of a screenshot example, right? So we can see here, I can see the student screens. I'm going to be able to literally look into the screen. I can see these open tabs, and I can even take a look at their entire browsing history, right? I can, if this is Nick's screen, I can see that Nick's watching something on YouTube, right? I'm going to go into his tabs. I'm going to close out that YouTube video. I can click on his history, and I'm going to be able to see everything that Nick has been doing. Now,
Ben?
Yeah, please.
Hey, Ben, we had one quick question. Does the teacher have to set a start and end time so student devices are not locked down when changing classes or different going between periods and teachers?
Fantastic question. 2 ways we can do this. We can link it up to kind of like a bell schedule, right? You can set this up to where 9 o'clock is period 1, 10:05 is period 2, etc. And the system will automatically start and end classes. However, we don't always recommend that, because what happens if there's a half day, it's an assembly day, it's a block schedule. So what we would do essentially is, as a teacher, when you start your class, you literally click a start button and it's going to default it with 1 hour. You can put a end time of 11 o'clock, so you can customize when it ends. However, let's say class is over, you forgot to close out your classroom, you run to the break room to use the restroom, but Mike Jolly here, he's starting out his history class. He's going to log in and it's going to say, Nick is currently in Vin's French class, right? We here at Securely, how it's designed is a student can physically only be at one location at a time, right? So if I was running my classroom and I forgot to end my classroom, Mike Jolly starts his classroom. It's going to give him a quick warning. It says, hey, Nick is currently in Vin's classroom. But as Mike Jolly, I can say, nope, Nick's sitting right here. All that means is Vin forgot to close out his classroom. So Mike's going to start his class and it's going to automatically pull Nick into his classroom, right? So the teacher that's supposed to be running the classroom, they're going to take priority and they're going to pull that student into the correct classroom automatically, right? So big shift here. I know a lot of other services out there, it's let me call Vin and say, hey, Vin, you've got to turn off your classroom. Crap, I went to the bathroom. I'll be back in 2 minutes, right? Now Mike Jolly's sitting there waiting because his half of his classroom was in Vin's classroom previously, right? So in terms of your question there, right? The system will automatically default a 1 hour class, 30-minute class, whatever your current schedule is like, but you can always extend that. You can pick a time where it auto shuts off. Okay, so in terms of like the browsing screens, looking at screens here, right? A great thing, right? Big thing here is you want to be able to manage these devices. Now, I've had some schools that say, ooh, that's a little too much. As a teacher, I don't want that much responsibility. So what I've had some teachers do is that they pretty much project this view onto the front screen. So now every single student can see everyone's screen. So if Nick here is off task, everyone in the classroom is going to see Nick being off task. This is more of the passive approach, right? So the teacher is going to project their screen. We're going to see every single student's screen right away. And as the teacher, I'm going to focus of walking around the classroom, and I'm not going to be the teacher that's just sitting in my desk monitoring everyone's screen to making sure they're paying attention. So several ways a teacher can handle this. As you start to use the tool, you're going to find what best suits your style of teaching. And the communication, right? So here we can have allow students to raise their hand. They can pretty much click on an icon and their name's going to start to flash on the teacher tool. And so, a teacher can say, a student has a question. A lot of these were made because of essentially COVID, right? We did distance learning. And instead of a student raising their hand in class now, they're remotely learning. So they can go ahead and click on a button and the teacher is going to get a little flash on that student name. If I want, I can chat with my students as well, right? Here I can see Nick saying, goofing around. I can write a message directly to Nick. Hey, Nick, please pay attention. Nick's going to get a pop-up on his screen. Nick can go ahead and, of course, read that message. If I need help as a student, but I'm too nervous to raise my hand, I can just go ahead and chat directly with my teacher and ask, hey, I'm kind of confused. Can you explain that again? Right? So there's going to be a two-way chat between the teachers and the students. Of course, this does not work on a student-to-student base, only teacher to student. And then teachers can also make an announcement. This is a homework is due on Friday. Everyone gets a big pop-up on their screen that says homework is due Friday. If they want to escape it, they have to click OK, they acknowledge, and they read that message. I thought that was what it's used for, but as I talk to teachers are using it as, hey, Nick, eyes on your own paper. I see what you're doing. And then Nick's going to get this all of a sudden and get this huge pop-up on his screen. And it's like, oh, crap, I got caught. Okay, Nick can't do anything. He has to click OK. Then he can go ahead and continue with his day, right? So there's lots of when it comes to kind of that communication and allowing teachers to really understand of how to better manage devices during the class session. But what you see here, this kind of an overview of what Securely has to offer, right? There's definitely a lot to it. There's more that we haven't discussed, but you all got that strong high level of what Securely has to offer.
And to kind of piggyback on that, as you look at all the solutions, you know, this stuff you can that's here, a lot of it you can buy standalone. People will always ask, well, you know, hey, I don't want to remove my filter right now. You know, I may not be happy with it, but it's not worth the headache. But we can certainly add in auditor tools, for example. We can bring in the auditor. We can start looking at, you know, giving you that student wellness, student safety. We can pull out, you know, the data from emails and docs and Drive. We can have our 24 team looking at that piece, or you can add in the classroom and MDM. You know, there's nothing that impacts, you know, whether you have a light speed or eyeballs or anything, doesn't impact at all on from the filtering side if you're using the classroom MDM or even the, you know, the visitor tool. So some of this is standalone, but ultimately what's been so attractive to many districts, especially right now, especially as they're looking at ESSER funds and grant monies and looking at being sustainable down the road, is making a concerted effort to consolidate things, and not just consolidation to get, you know, everything under one and get one or two good things and a few okay things. You know, we've prided ourselves as Securely in not releasing something, putting something out until it's ready for prime time. And that's why you'll see Notify is still in beta on the far right there, because we want to make sure when we release something as a full solution that it is ready to go. So ultimately, the whole thing is about student wellness. Everything ties in, even classroom, even MDM. You know, Vin mentioned, you know, I think back to when my kids' district went remote 2 years ago, and my 7-year-old daughter got handed an iPad, and a teacher who'd never been remote, and they're trying to talk and go to sites and, you know, trying to point out where an app was, and it was like herding cats. And so we know what teachers are going through. We know what administrators are going through. We know what kids are going through. We're in a mental health crisis. You know, I saw a stat the other day that 1 in 5 kids will have a diagnosable mental health disorder between middle and high school right now. And in our data, just the Securely data from the 10 million students we serve, the amount of flags we see, not necessarily for suicide, right? But what we've seen the increase of over the 2 years ago are the grief and depression. It's hard, right? I think of being an adult with coping mechanisms, and I turn on the news and it's tough. So I try to put myself in the same spot as a 12-year-old kid, and they look at the economy, they look at world events, they look at health events, they look at everything politically, socially, all the stuff that's going on top of school. And school's hard enough as it is. I think all of you remember how challenging school was at times, both socially and academically. So we're here to help. This is what we do. We provide the services that are going to help you. They're going to make your job easier, things easier on your departments, your coworkers, and more importantly, we're going to make it safer for kids, so kids can get back to focusing on learning, which is what they're there to do anyway. So we really appreciate your time. You know, on behalf of Nick and Dan and Vin, we're grateful that you would give us an hour, and we do want to stay on. You know, we've got 6-7 more minutes. So if there are any live questions, you know, feel free to unmute and ask, or type them in chat, and we'll sit here and wait to answer any questions that you have.
I'm assuming Craig maybe has the answer to this. It's a tiered level of services. There's probably a base level. I know a lot of our schools, I'm the IT director for the Western Nebraska Service Agency, and we've got several districts of mine that are online here that use Securely for the filter piece. So now it's an add-on. Is that kind of how this is looking like, I would assume?
Yeah, that's correct. And Craig, unless you have something different, if you don't mind me answering that, BJ, yes, if they are using the filter, that's why Dan is on here as the customer success and account manager representative. So if you want to look at any of their solutions, if you want to do a free trial, if you already have the filter and want to look at the classroom management or MDM or the student safety, you know, the districts that are on here can reach out to their customer success manager, and they can set up that free trial and get them, you know, any other information that they need.
Yeah, BJ, just to address that a little bit. Initially, we did start with the tiered pricing with the filter, and we met one of those tiers statewide, but that was the only product that we had that set up under, was the actual filter application itself.
Good, thanks. So I mean, I'm assuming this will be in the group buy for this spring then.
Yes, we'll be announcing that potentially today if I get it finished, or sometime this week at least.
Okay.
And so all these items are listed in the online marketplace, the ESUCC marketplace. you need any direction on how to find those items, let me know. We can direct you on that. But everything's being placed through the marketplace, and then Securely receives those orders, and then they process those orders.
And is that the process, I guess, for our schools that are listening, to work through you? I know with Dan online as well, and Nick, would you prefer, I mean, and we get a pretty good price break when we go through ESUCC, our co-op program here in the state. Craig, you might put your contact info in the chat, and all of you guys, if there's questions afterwards.
Certainly, BJ. Yeah, everything would be run through the ESUCC for you guys.
I mean, if you have product specific questions, obviously that should probably go to the Securely team. I'm not that knowledgeable about it, so I'll direct you that way if you do ask me. But if it's about just getting the order placed within the marketplace, then I can help.
And I just saw a question pop up about training. Is that included in the purchase?
So there are some levels. Oh, then go ahead.
Well, yeah. So in terms of kind of the communication with ESCC, right, or ESUCC, utilize Securely to do the demo, to get a test run open, to answering technical questions, right, to play around with the solution. Use your Securely contacts for all that. When you're ready to place that order, right, that's going to go through the marketplace there. And when it comes to training, right, there are a couple of different tiers and levels of training. We absolutely have a free training solution where there's a portal where you can, everyone, your teachers, your users can log in and watch quick videos, take a quiz afterwards, and get a little certification. But if you want a really professional sit down, I want all of my teachers here. We want a long training that's going to break down every single bit of information. We do offer a paid training for something like that. But honestly, at the end of the day, our product is designed to be as simple as possible. Most of our schools can get away with just kind of the free training that we have. But again, if you really want a professional development day, that is something we can offer the school district if needed.
And on the deployment for if you're not a Securely customer, period, and you're looking at trying this out through Nick and Vin, we do have deployment calls. We have a sales engineer, someone who is way more technical than Nick or Vin or Dan or myself, and they'll walk you through your whole deployment. It's it's a very easy setup. Typically, we can deploy a district with 50,000 people in under half an hour. Sometimes takes up to an hour, but we have sales engineers that walk through that. That is free. That is part of the service. And then on the safety services, the Auditor and 24, we do offer sessions at no cost for your principals, because typically districts have those safety alerts going to principals and counselors. We will offer a session where we pop into your standing, whether it's principal or counselor training, and do a 30-45 minute high level overview of what your district is using, what we're flagging, what those flags look like, and what other schools typically, how they handle those alerts internally, because we want you to have that peace of mind. So that's there also is free. The main paid training Vin was speaking of is a very detailed classroom specific. That's for the classroom tool to train those teachers. But as Vin said, the free stuff we offer has been enough to get everybody where they need to be for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just highlight quickly how to find these items in the online marketplace. Once you're logged in, if you find the Securely logo, or that's one way of doing it. But if you click on the logo itself, it'll give you the contact information. I saw Nick and Dan putting their contact information in there, but we do have their contacts listed here, so you could reach out to them if you cannot find it. If you shop on supplier site, it's going to take you into that store where these items are listed. Hit search and scroll down on the left-hand side and find Securely under vendors. And at this point, we can narrow down the pricing or each of the items that were highlighted. So classroom, I think, was one of them that is very popular. If you click into that, you get greater details on it. So each one may be priced differently. This one's a flat $350 across the board versus something like Auditor based on tiered pricing. BJ, you were talking about some of the tiered pricing. There are built-in tiers per district. And so if you're a district of 5,000 or greater, you're going to get that tiered pricing. So that gives you a little idea of how to find those items in the marketplace.
Thanks, Craig.
If anybody has any questions or wants to follow up demo of our product live, I'd be more than happy to jump on a call and do that with you guys and show it how it actually looks in real time with you. And we can do either a classroom on our device management side, or do the student safety products with you, or both.
Vin, this might be a question for you. We've got some student programs. I'm at ESU 13 with BJ and have a number of student programs. Most of those students are in our locations, but we do have some remote, primarily with Chromebooks. So our in-house people were able to lock them down to they log in only with their school account.
Yep.
Or our ESU accounts, and push the filtering at that level.
Yep.
Some of our other programs, we've got students that are remote that are using other school accounts.
Okay.
Are there ways that we can still do the filtering on a device level rather than user level?
Let's talk about devices. Are these students on a Chromebook,
They are.
you said? So do these students have a school issued email address?
The ones that we have in-house, yes, they do.
it.
But we do have some students that are outside of our service agency. And that's what we're kind of fighting against. Do we want to force them to have one of our accounts or something that they use on their own? If we could do the filtering at a device level on a Chromebook rather than the user level, that would be our preference. But if we need to force them into one of our accounts, we can do that as well.
Yeah, it's going to be the latter. A Chromebook, how a Chromebook is designed, it follows the user, right? If I log in as my school account, all my school extensions are going to populate my filtering, my classroom, etc. If I log with my personal device, right, it's going to use all my personal information and none of the school data is going to load, right? So in terms of how a Chromebook is designed, it's a user-based solution. So those students would have to be logged in with their school domain.
Okay, thank you. And Nick, we will probably be reaching out. We're definitely interested in classroom, so we'll reach out.
Happy to help.
Can one of the Securely team members explain how you count licenses? Is it FTE? Is it devices? So forth?
So our user count is based on student total plus full-time employees. Those are not your cafeteria workers or janitors, right? Those are your full-time employees, whether it be your teachers or administrators. That's how we're calculating total user count.
Nick, I probably need to clarify there as well. So at a regional agency, we've got separate OUs for our student accounts and those staff members as well. Can we do that at those OU levels? So we've got about 200 employees, but we only have 8 that are really working with students. The rest of it is other skills, I guess. Can we do that at an OU level where we've got just the student groups that we're working with?
So if you have, do you have one OU for your staff and one OU for your students that are coming in?
We have one OU for our alternative ed programs in general. So we have really 4 different programs that are considered alternative ed in our organization. So yes, that OU, which is an alt ed rather than just our ESU13.org account or OU.
Are all those
They are
devices
separate.
managed devices then on
Correct.
your OU? Okay, yeah, we could filter those.
Okay.
On the OU.
Any further questions?
All right, guys. Well, thank you, Craig, for setting this up, first of all, but really appreciate everybody's time. I know time is strained nowadays, but I really appreciate you spending some time with us to talk about Securely, and certainly give me a holler, give me a call on my cell or an email if you want to set something up coming up here over the next week or so.
Yep. Thanks, Nick. And one thing I wanted to mention, Craig, I added in the Securely Learn site. That's for free. So all staff have to do is to create an account. So if you want to get an idea of those courses Vin mentioned, I think there's 4 courses ranging from 6 to 15 minutes for that certification. You can pop on there, create a free account, and you can look, and that's the idea. And you'll see when you look at that, the type of training staff will be able to get for the classroom solution.
We might just add that into the marketplace as a resource.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for that, Craig. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
gentlemen.
Thanks.